All right, there's Katie. David Earhart here, the chair for the Menlo Park Library Commission. I'd like to welcome you to the commission meeting, the July 19th meeting, 2021. This is a teleconference meeting with the Library Commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating remotely to ensure proper social distancing in this federal, state, and local emergency. With that out of the way, I'd like to do the roll call for attendance. Let me introduce the Library Commission members and staff that are present in the call now. First, we've got Vice Chair Alan Cohen, myself, David Earhart, the chair. We have Commissioner Sukanya Guha. We have Commissioner Katie Hedrick, Commissioner Kristen Leap, and Commissioner Vamsi Velagapudi. The staff present includes Sean Reinhardt, the Director of Library and Community Services, and Nick Zedka, the Assistant Library Services Director. Nick is also the staff liaison for the Library Commission. Nick, would you please provide the instructions for the Library Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Sure, thank you, Chair Earhart. Commissioners are asked to please keep their cameras on and their microphones off unless recognized by the chair. For members of the public who wish to speak, the chair will call for public comment at various points throughout the meeting. If you'd like to make a public comment, engage that raised hand function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're dialing in and would like to make a comment, you press *9 and that will electronically raise your hand. Then you'll be recognized by the chair and I'll unmute you for your comment.
Thank you. Under public comment, the public may address the Library Commission on any subject not listed in the agenda. Each speaker may address the Library Commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name, address, or political jurisdiction in which you live. The Library Commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the Library Commission cannot respond to non-agenda items brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Staff Liaison Zedka, do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda?
If anyone who is in attendance would like to make a public comment, please engage that raise hand feature on your Zoom screen or press *9 on your phone now. And I am seeing no hands raised for comment.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item D, the regular business. Under regular business, the Library Commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require a Library Commission approval. The first item under the agenda, D1, is the approval of the minutes from the June 21st, 2021 Library Commission meeting, which were attached in the agenda. For the commission members, any clarifying questions before taking public comment? Seeing none. Staff Liaison Zedka, do we have any public comment on this item?
If anyone would like to make a public comment on the minutes from the last Library Commission meeting, please use that raise hand function in the Zoom screen or press *9 on your phone now. Seeing no comment.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the meeting up for comments or discussion from the Library Commission. Are there any comments?
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay. Commissioner Hadrovic is.
Sorry.
No problem. So we have a second as well. Staff Liaison Zedka, can we take roll call on the stated motion?
Sure. On the motion to approve the minutes from the June 21st Library Commission meeting, Commissioner Leap, how do you vote?
In favor.
Commissioner Velagapudi, how do you vote?
In favor.
Commissioner Guha, how do you vote?
In favor.
And Chair Earhart, how do you vote?
In favor.
And since Commissioners Cohen and Hadrovich were motioners and seconders, we will assume they are voting in favor, and the motion passes.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next agenda item, which is assigning commissioners as informational liaisons to the library affiliate groups. We will now have a brief verbal presentation on assigning commissioners as informational liaisons. This will be provided by the Assistant Library Director, Zedga, who will make the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Earhart. Just a couple of quick notes. The Commission has for the past few years assigned members as informational liaisons to library affiliate groups. The idea here is that commissioners so assigned could be sort of informational conduits between these groups and the Commission. The staff is recommending for this go round of assignments that we assign a backup to the primary informational liaison, just in case you can't make a meeting, or it just makes it a little easier sort of operationally to have a backup. We're also suggesting that we add the Parks and Rec Commission because of the merger of the departments and the sort of more interconnectedness of the work that's being done. We think it would be a good idea to have a liaison to the Parks and Rec Commission. So the job description is basically attend meetings of the affiliate groups when possible, get to know the chair or the leadership of the affiliate groups, and bring information back to the Library Commission, which you would report out on in the individual commissioner reports section of the agenda. I've got a little chart that was included in the staff report. Let's see. Okay, that's great. I think I did the wrong one. There we go. I'll find it. Here it is. And basically what I have is filled in italics, the name of the commissioner who is either the current liaison or has expressed interest in being a liaison for the various groups. So I guess we can sort of go through and people can express their interest, and we can just fill in the chart as we go. And I don't believe we have to vote on this. It can be something that's sort of assigned by acclamation, so we don't have to take votes on each one if we don't want to. That's my presentation.
Thank you very much. So like I said, I think when we reviewed this at least one meeting ago, there were some sort of soft volunteers for that. So we've gone ahead and sort of penciled some names in there. So I guess the first sort of strike at this would be, for those of you who have your names in italics in the primary informational liaison, are you willing to take on that role or continue in that role if that was the prior position you had before?
Only thing I wanted to comment on, I guess Commissioner Lee's not here, but my understanding was she is already somehow involved with Friends of the Library. And now that they're going back to live meetings, it appears that they do them during the week in the middle of the day. And depending on the day, I'm working. So this most recent one, I just couldn't, I had work. So I couldn't go over to the library and meet with them. So if this looks like the days they choose are days I just simply aren't able to go to a meeting, I may switch roles with Commissioner Lee, but I'm happy to talk to her when she's back at a future meeting. I'm happy to stay on the as a liaison. I like the group and would like to continue to participate. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to frequently attend if they have their meetings at certain hours of the week. So that's my only comment.
Thank you for that.
Thanks.
I'll speak next. Related to the Library Foundation, I actually have joined their board. So I'm on the board of the Library Foundation. So I'm happy because of that to stay as the primary informational liaison. I think that any of you that might be interested in fundraising related to the library and also seeing the way they are gathering community support for library activities. It's a really interesting group. A lot of good ideas come out of it, and I've learned a lot since I joined that board. So if fundraising related to the library sounds interesting to you, I think that I would encourage you to become the secondary informational liaison and maybe just learn a little bit more about it, because you might decide you'd like to become more active in it, either while you're still on the board or when you're still on the commission, or when you roll off of it. Related to the second affiliate group that I am listed as the primary, the Menlo Park Historical Association, it is not a big time commitment. I'm happy to stay on doing that, but I also took it on more of as a default because I think there wasn't anyone else that really was that interested in taking that role last time. So I am certainly willing to invite other commissioners to take that role, and I would be happy to be the secondary if you want to. So don't feel like you're stepping on my toes by announcing that you're interested in doing that.
Just relates to literacy partners. I've connected with my good kind of literacy partners, so I'm happy to play the liaison role going forward, and I'll join their monthly meetings going forward. And I'm happy to play a secondary role as well on wherever there's gaps, so we'll come back to that.
Okay.
I'm going to have 3 new curricula this year, and 0 available during the day, and still COVID. So I'm not going to volunteer for any of these positions because that's asking too much. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say no, unfortunately, because I'm teaching as well, and there's just no time right now, unfortunately. So, but I would like to step in sometime in the future.
So I guess I can volunteer for the primary for the Parks and Rec Commission. So since that's a new one for this year, I'd be interested in looking at how that commission first of all works, and then also keep contact with that. So if that helps.
David, I would be willing to take the secondary informational liaison for the Parks and Rec Commission. I did, you may recall, my first year on the commission, I actually went to quite a few. I don't remember what that really long worded title was for that, but it was, they were doing a survey or something that was related to Parks and Rec. And I did find that to be very interesting. And it really helped to bring the focus of sort of one Menlo and all the issues that I think are really pivotal when we're talking about one community center that has all these different aspects, but also how all the services in Menlo Park really work well together and take care of all the needs in the community. So I found it fascinating, and also helped me to really understand things a little bit better related to how the library is one component of the services offered. So I think you'll enjoy doing that. But if you can't attend something that they're doing, I'd be happy to step in for you if you let me know.
Okay. And I was also going to comment, I'd be happy to be the secondary for the Historical Association. I have some interest in that as well. So.
Great, and feel free if you want to be the primary and I can step in secondary. That it really is a very low key. I don't think that they have meetings yet. And when I was there, Jim, who was the, I couldn't actually tell you off the top of my head who is their president right now, because the COVID thing kind of screwed everything up. I know they have one, but I don't think they've had any meetings. But
it's Jim Johnston. They've been having, they've been meeting at member homes, I believe.
Okay.
Outside sort of socially distant meetings.
Okay, so I have not had the best communication with them this year. I did prior to COVID, I did go to a couple of events that they sponsored to get to know people there. And Jim used to send me a summary of what they were doing. So David, either one of us could do it, but certainly if you wanted to take the lead, I'm fine with that. Or leaving it in.
Well, I think I'll focus on getting up to speed on the Parks and Rec one, and then start building some momentum on the Historical Association, and we can talk maybe in the future about if that's something we want to transition.
Yeah, as long as I am the primary informational liaison for the Historical Association, let me just make a little plug for it to any of you that aren't aware. You can join, you can become a member of the Historical Association of Menlo Park for, I think it's $20 annual membership. And then they do send out a really interesting electronic newsletter. So just learning about the history of Menlo Park, you can do that just by joining it. So I encourage all of you to join it. But anyway, I'm happy to do that, David.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be happy to volunteer to be the secretary for the Library Foundation. Okay, you have to tag team with you on that one.
So I guess my recommendation is that the next meeting that Commissioner Lee attends, if we can quickly revisit this and just, Alan, I'm assuming you were going to follow up with her anyway, but that if get her input on whether or not she wants to step in and say the literacy partners does the secondary or so. But it looks like we've got some good coverage here, and I appreciate the support for this. Okay. Staff liaison, Jedga, do you think it'd be beneficial to include that at the bottom of the agenda going forward? Because I know we've got the meeting scheduled there. I don't know, just so we kind of keep front and center
Yeah, I think I can work that in. I've got like the affiliate group meeting schedules, first Thursday, third Wednesday,
right.
whatever. I can just put primary and secondary liaison right after that. Yep.
Yeah, and you can just do a P for primary and S, so you can save a little bit of room there at the bottom of the table. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks for volunteering, everybody, and reaffirming support for these things. I appreciate that. Moving on to agenda item D3, which is the fiscal year 2021-22 budget and library reopening presentation. It looks like we're going to have a brief presentation on the new fiscal year budget and on the library reopening, sort of what's happened since it's reopened, from Assistant Library Director Nick Zegta, who will make the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Earhart. Let me share my screen here. And this will be brief, I promise. So just a quick, we reported out a little bit about the budget process while we were going through it, but just a quick recap. Now that the fiscal year, well, it's 21-22, even though that says 21-21. Seems like time has stood still at several different points over the past year, but that's just a typo. Just a quick recap. And to let you all know that the city, the Admin Services Department of the city now has a portal called OpenGov. The link is here, and I'll include it in the minutes so that you all can take advantage of that. You can see a lot of really good information, budget information, program information from the city by going to the OpenGov site. And specifically, the link there is for the Library and Community Services Stories page, which kind of gives you a little bit of narrative context for those charts and numbers. The nice thing about OpenGov is you can sort of change the view so that it's more useful to you for the information. So we spoke before about the service level enhancements that we were asking for as a department. And our operating budget was restored essentially to where we were from the 18-19 fiscal year. So almost almost all the way back to where we were pre-pandemic. There were also, there was a restoration of staff positions meant to boost services that were eliminated due to the pandemic. That included one full-time equivalent librarian position, 4 full-time equivalent program assistant positions, which would be broken into 2 full-time and 4 half-time positions, and 1 full-time equivalent senior program assistant position, which was earmarked for special events. Just a quick note that our current staffing levels are still a little low as we're coming out of the pandemic and staffing back up. We have a number of vacancies as well, and HR is dealing with all of the vacancies citywide. They estimate that they can do about 2 positions a week. So they're going to need some capacity as we get staffing back to normal. It's going to take a while to get us all the way staffed back up. Another note that the gymnastics program for Library and Community Services has gotten the green light to be reactivated, and we hope to reactivate that sometime in the fall. The libraries reopened to the public on July 6th. The branch and the main library are now open 40 hours a week. The schedule is there as you see it, Monday through Thursday, starting a little later in the afternoon and staying open into the evening. Friday and Saturday.
Pardon me, Nick. I think that one is also a typo.
Yeah, I'm
Tuesday,
sorry.
Tuesday.
It should be Friday. It should be Friday and Saturday. I'm sorry. 10 to 6, closed Sunday, Monday, and holidays. I looked at this earlier today and I didn't see either one of those typos, but there you go. Interim services have started for the seniors who are displaced by the construction at the Onetta Harris Community Center campus. And we have classes from those Onetta Harris, from the Onetta Harris site starting at the branch, including Aztec dance, and we'll start to ramp up some of those classes at the branch as we move into the fall. So the first 2 weeks went well. We had a really good turnout on the first day. About 275 people at the main library, which is probably, it's a lot heavier than a normal midsummer day. And then it sort of dropped off a bit. Circulation numbers are looking pretty good. A lot of people coming in and using the library, borrowing materials, returning materials, but that was kind of expected because of the strength of the usage of the curbside service. We are targeting October for expanding hours, hopefully back to somewhere near what our regular normal 59 hours a week schedule is at both the main and the branch. And with that, I'll pause to see if you have any questions and to see if there's any public comment on that presentation.
Just quick clarification question. So expanding hours back to the original time periods, is that with the existing staff, or would you need incremental staff to enable that compared to ones you've already shown?
Yeah, thanks for that question. There's a lot of the sort of night and weekend hours during normal times are handled by temporary staff. And so that operating part of the budget was restored. It does take a little while to get those folks back in. Hopefully we can get back the folks that we had before. Some people have left the area. Some people may have moved on to other positions. So we won't know until we get back out there. But the permanent positions will be just those added permanent positions there in the service enhancement screen that I showed, the 6 positions.
And if I could just add to that, currently we are at the sort of limited schedule because we were basically operating with the staffing levels that we kind of experienced during the pandemic, and even with some vacancies that have occurred since the shelter-in-place orders and the budget reductions. But we're not offering a number of the other programs that are commonly provided by libraries, including ours, story times, very kind of in-house sort of programs and events. So it's really about browsing and picking up books. So that's the other element that we anticipate phasing back in the fall, and the permanent or regular positions are, a key part of that to add that capacity back as well.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but is there any immediate impact of the San Mateo County instructions around masking recently, in terms of what, because I don't recall what the reopening plan was in terms of vaccinated versus not vaccinated, mask, not mask. Is there any impact of that?
Yeah, well, we're complying with the health orders from the county. So we are not requiring masking. It's strongly recommended for all who come to both libraries, but we're not requiring it. We are requiring it for staff, just in the interest of our staff's health. When they're with the public, masks are required. When they're back in staff areas or working in an office space away from other people, we're not requiring staff to wear masks.
And just to clarify, this is for people who are fully vaccinated.
Fully vaccinated,
So if
that's
you're
correct.
fully vaccinated, strongly recommended to wear a mask, and that's just consistent with the county's guidance that was issued on Friday. And as Nick pointed out, the staff are wearing and modeling that behavior, all of us, in the public areas. According to Cal OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration guidelines, those did not change on Friday. And the city is verifying vaccination status of all the employees. So fully vaccinated employees are not required to wear a mask if they're just in a staff area and there are no unvaccinated employees around. So it's hardly simple, but we're basically just hewing to the state and county guidelines on this one.
Thanks for coming, because I know part of the situation now is that the no mask thing for vaccinated was related to if people could confirm that they were vaccinated, like whether a company was asking if they're vaccinated or not. And so you just confirmed that, at least from a city standpoint, you're seeking to get that confirmation.
Correct. And just to be super clear for the record, unvaccinated individuals are required to wear masks. For sure. And as we know, there are a number of folks who are not eligible to receive the vaccine, children, for example. A couple other things while we're on the topic, just to be crystal clear. Childcares, masks are still required of all folks in the childcares that the city operates, for example. And then on days when the library is designated as a cooling center, everyone is required to wear masks regardless of their vaccination status. And again, that is guidance or rules from the state and the county.
Thank you for the clarification. Any further clarification questions from the commission? Staff liaison, are there any hands waving for public comment?
If you'd like to make I'll call for some and see. If you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please engage that raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or if you're a dial-in listener, press *9 on your phone now. And seeing none. Did you freeze there, Chair Earhart, or can you still hear us?
I can hear you now. I thought maybe you had frozen.
I just ran out of things to say, actually.
Oh yeah, I was watching you. You were going. Sorry about that. Okay. So there's no further action for the commission take on this topic. So, but thank you for the update. At this time, we'd like to move on to the agenda item for an MPCC project update, and I believe that Assistant Library Director Nick Zetka will provide the presentation for that update.
I will indeed. Thank you, Chair Earhart. I'm going to share my screen again. Hopefully we don't discover as many typos on this one. Can everyone see my screen okay? Okay. Again, just a quick update to keep you all up on what is happening with the Menlo Park Community Campus project. The project page is a really great source of information. It's where internally, the city side, we're trying to gather all of the information from all the various meetings and reports that have been going on and collect them in this one place. It's menlopark.org/Bellhaven. And there's an option to subscribe to updates from that page, which you might find useful. In the recent past, end of May until June, they were doing some utility excavations to make sure they know exactly where all the different utility lines, water, sewer, power, cable are. They made some modifications to the parking lot in preparation for construction, all the while allowing access to continue back to Kelly Park, the youth center portables back there, and the Beechwood School. If you want a sort of good recap of what's been going on to date and some good drawings and sort of fly through, I think, of the confirmed project, the town hall presentation is a good place to look. More recently, the site is now a construction site. It's been closed to the public and closed to the staff. There's a notice board on site there where current information is posted up, and there's mailings have gone out to the neighborhood to let them know about construction activities. And we held a big community giveaway on the week of June 19th, culminating on June 19th, where we gave away equipment and furnishings that weren't needed for interim services or for the new facility, making arrangements with community groups and faith-based groups and nonprofits to come and get some of that sort of industrial kitchen equipment, for instance, that we weren't going to use in the new facility or be able to use in the interim services. It was very successful and a very successful open house for repurposing. I don't know if the report of what was available and what was taken away is up on the project site yet, but it's very interesting. There was we gave away a lot of stuff. Currently, right now, they're doing abatement activities on site, and that's where they go through and they sort of test the various different materials to make sure they're not going to be deconstructing something that's toxic or is going to harm the environment. So they have to go through and test a lot of different things, a lot of different materials. Coming up in August and October is the demolition of the old facility. And Chair Earhart made a good suggestion, which we've passed on to the construction team of trying to find something old from the site to incorporate in the new site. Just sounds like a really good idea. Further in the fall, looking ahead, we're going to begin conversations with the community on programming at the new facility. And then there's the interior build out and the furnishing fixtures and equipments. That's what FF&E stands for. And then even further into the fall, the foundation and superstructure work will begin. And we're hoping to have a groundbreaking ceremony when the site has been cleared before the new construction actually begins, sometime in the October timeframe. With that, I am finished with my presentation. Happy to take any clarifying questions before we go to public comment.
Are there any clarifying questions from the commission? Thank you for considering my my suggestion about the bringing some legacy piece from the existing facility into the future as sort of a tie-in and continuity. So thank you for that consideration there.
I think it's a good idea.
So staff liaison at this time, yes.
I was just going to
Lee.
say, I also think it's a good idea.
Okay. Thank you for that. Staff liaison, do we have any public comment on this item at this time?
If at this time anyone would like to make public comment on this item, please raise your hand. And I see one comment from Pam Jones. Hang on just a second, Pam. I will, you can now unmute yourself and make your comment.
Good evening, this is Pam Jones, and I tried to use my phone because I know my audio is absolutely ghastly, but my my hand wasn't recognized online. So just so that you know, I want to thank you all for starting the programming over at the library, and I want to remind you that not everybody uses the internet or is signed up for alerts. So it's critical that the city uses the type of communications that they did in 2012, 2013, when they were doing the visioning. The city knows how to communicate with people when they really want to. I am glad to see that community will be involved with the programming, because I did hear some of the programming previously that you were talking about, ideas that you were talking about consolidating staff and the services, since everything's going to be in one building. I want to make sure that everything that is discussed, that the community is involved. And when you do present things to the community, they're not presented in such a way that they're biased. I think we all still have really pretty gun shy because of what happened with us with the general plan and the visioning and the general plan. I also wanted to thank you all for doing the something old with the something new. That's really very special. And my one last thing is this. I do have concern that the staffing is not going to look like the community, that we will not have the staffing that we have had in the past. And I'm concerned because I know we've had some job descriptions change. And sometimes when titles and job positions change, previous employees do not qualify. And it would be really sad if we went to the center and we didn't know who the people were that were working there and that they did not live here. So anyway, just wanted you to be mindful of that. And again, thank you all for your work and your service, your commitment to the city of Menlo Park, because I know it's not easy. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more public comments, staff liaison?
I do not see any other public comments.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just one other piece of information to share, and it's that I think we're the only library in the Bay Area, possibly the state of California, who knows, even the nation, that has a pool table. And I will tell you that the pool table has got to be one of the most popular things about the library since we reopened. And the reason why we have a pool table is because the main library a portion of it is now the senior annex. As part of the MPCC campus construction, as you know, all those facilities have been closed and moved to other locations, including the senior center. So the senior center now offers services out of the Arriaga Family Recreation Center on the other side of the parking lot from the main library. And there's a lounge and game room for seniors in the library. And I will tell you that the pool table has been very, very popular with the seniors, and the space is actually working out quite nicely for them. We found that they want to stay later in the day than we originally thought. So that's another element of the library reopening, and also the MPCC services. Just wanted to call out for everybody.
Thank you for that update. To the commission, there wasn't any real need to take action on this. It was up informational, but I guess at this time, is there any action that the commission would like to take, or is there a motion to take any action? Okay, thank you. didn't think there was going to be, but just want to make sure that you were given the opportunity. All right, moving on in the agenda, moving to item D5, onboarding of new commission members. I guess I'll just a little bit of a preface for this, and then I'll let the staff liaison do a brief introduction. A few years ago, when we were working on the Library Commission sort of strategic plan and the planning for that, one of the items we had for a while was around how to improve the onboarding of new commission members to make sure that they, that new commission members were able to be productive, felt engaged, and had the right connections, from the start. So it wouldn't take you a full year of your 4-year term to get up to speed, so then you have 3 years to do that. So we discussed in the preparation for this meeting potentially, trying to do something with that. It's not currently in the working plan for the commission, but since we've just brought on the new commissioners, we thought we'd address this topic in this meeting. So with that, Staff Liaison, Assistant Library Director Nick Zedka, would you proceed with the introduction?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Earhart. As the chair said, we were looking at ways to sort of improve the onboarding experience for new commissioners, sort of let them hit the ground running. Came up with an idea of collecting a sort of a resource list of documents and sites that would be good for commissioners to be familiar with and aware of. And also the idea, sort of putting it out there of perhaps pairing up a new commissioner with an experienced commissioner, just to have them as an informational source for anything that might come up during their first year or so on the commission. So that's basically what the staff report is. It includes a list of some sites that I thought were of interest to the commission, but happy to entertain suggestions about other sites to add or edits made to that list. And then interested if the commission would want to discuss some sort of buddy program or some other sort of program to give to provide a human resource for incoming commissioners. I'm always available. Sean's available. If you have any questions, it's happy to answer them. Just reach out by phone or email, and happy to answer them.
Thank you for that introduction. And it's not wanting to put you on the spot, Commissioner Velagapudi, but I guess the ask is, given the opportunity, for having one of the existing commission members maybe spend some offline time with you in terms of some of the workings of the commission and various other things. If that would be value to you, and we'll follow up with Commissioner Lee as well, then let us know, and we'll be happy to see how to make that work for you. But I felt like that list was actually a pretty good one. It's a nice synopsis of the kind of the key information places to in one reference, for us.
And I can jump in with a very quick reaction as the newest member. So I think for the list, I've already found very helpful. Thanks for putting that together. And if there are things to add to it, please do. Because I find it very helpful, partly just to make sure that I'm not missing something, even if I was aware of things already. It's just helpful to know that this is the body of things which are helpful to know as a commissioner. So I found that very helpful. And secondly, as to having a body, I think that'll also be a helpful thing to do at least for 1 or 2 iterations, even if not on an ongoing basis. Partly for me to feel comfortable, I've got somebody I can ask what I think of as stupid questions instead of going into a broader forum. I'd love to be able to bounce that off a couple of folks before bringing it to the forum. So that'd be a very helpful resource. Again, just for 1 or 2 iterations, even if not an ongoing basis.
Yeah, we were discussing if we keep it to a one-on-one sort of conversation, that we don't transgress with the Brown Act issues as well. So would you like me to follow up with you offline, Commissioner Velagapudi, and see if we, identify, and try to work out that buddy situation. Okay.
Yes, please. Thanks.
Okay, sounds good. Like I said, we'll follow up with Commissioner Lee as well when she gets back engaged. Okay, let me get back to the agenda here. Give me one moment.
I'm happy to answer any stupid questions, just for the record. When I joined like a gazillion years ago, like my first year was basically like a dead year of just like figuring out what the hell was going on.
And
Okay.
Chair Earhart, we do have a hand raised in amongst the attendees for a comment.
Among the attendees. Oh, okay, from a public comment.
It's actually from the city council member liaison to the commission, Councilmember
Okay,
Nash,
excellent.
I think has a
can't-
comment.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. Let's go ahead with that then. Thank you.
Councilmember Nash, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and make your comment now if you'd like.
Thank you. I just wanted to welcome the new members, although I know it's your second meeting, and but state that I think it's fabulous what you're doing with onboarding the new members, and the resource list is really excellent. And I hope to see that idea taken up with other commissions as well, because it's really great. Thank you.
Thanks for Councilmember Nash.
Our in charge people are like super on top of it.
We now have another comment now, a hand raised from Pam Jones. Ms. Jones, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and make your comment.
Hello again. I want to thank you, all of the staff that put this together. I think it's really important. And I concur with Vice Mayor Nash and the commissioners that this really needs to go through, needs to be presented to all of the commissions and committees. And it may also be helpful to actually have a workshop so people that can ask questions. And the last thing, and only a teacher would notice this, is it needs a cover page. It doesn't have it starts with the table of contents. Anyway, I couldn't help myself, but again, thank you. This is a wonderful document.
And can I make a comment on this too? And I'm thinking of Commissioner Guha. You may say, "Oh no, I don't need this," and I'm not. I think we had 3 commissioners join in the middle of at the beginning of the pandemic, and 2 of them are no longer on the commission. But to the extent that I know you've never had the opportunity to attend an in-person meeting of our commission, and so many other community events that I know myself, and I can think of a few other commissioners that I saw back when we could attend different events that helped us, I think, feel more informed in our own roles, that I would just suggest, given our unique circumstances and the fact that you joined in a really unusual year, if you thought that you might benefit in some way from this program as well, even though you're not brand new to the commission, I certainly think it might be appropriate to extend it to you as well, if that was something that was interesting to you. You're muted though.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the suggestion. I totally agree with that, because I joined at a time last year when, and even now our meetings are on Zoom. So I would definitely, be interested in, getting together and getting to know the program much better. Yeah.
Okay. Then we will follow up with you, Commissioner Veligapudi, and with Commissioner Lee to coordinate and touch base. One of the things when I was considering this idea was, imagining in the mind of a commissioner, reviewing the agenda, going into the reports, what kind, sort of talking through like how I prepare for them, and I really try to put some time into them so that the conversation is an informed one, and if I have questions, I've got them pre-formatted. So, you know, it's not meant to be like a real heavy lift in terms of like some big intellectual exercise, but just kind of, you know, talk through what kinds of things might be naturally, and clearly for you to adopt your own methodology, but so maybe, you know, get some exposure to others. So, and if any of these other maybe longer tenured commissioners would like to be involved with that buddy system or workshopping how you prepare for the meetings or stay engaged with the meetings and so forth, then please, you know, let us know so we can draw you into that as we can. Okay. Any further questions or comments on this topic? Okay. Right. With that, we're moving on to the agenda item is topics E, informational items. Informational items are transmitted to the Library Commission in staff's effort to provide an update on matters of importance to the Commission. Informational items are not action items, however, a commissioner, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask any question on those informational items. With that, staff liaison, do we have any public?
Chair Earhart has frozen there, but I think what he was going to ask, if I could be so bold, is if there is any public comment on the informational items on today's agenda, which is the Library Commission's tentative agenda calendar. And if any member of the public would like to make a comment, please use that raise hand function on your Zoom screen now. And I do not see any comment. Let's hope that Commissioner Earhart returns. If not, Vice Chair Cohen, we might have to call on you to step in. Up.
See me, I'm the president. President.
You're
This is, you know,
you're running the
absolute
meeting.
power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Where's that button that I've heard so much about? No, so.
We have a hold button to request your library book. Is that the one you're talking
Yeah,
about?
no, I thought you were
I'm
waiving
back.
fees. I thought you were waiving fees. I thought all is forgiven. No? Oh my God. So
All right. Can you guys
there's
see?
David. David, you frightened everybody. People thought that I was actually in charge now. Thank goodness you're back. The adults are now back in the room.
I apologize. It seems like all too frequently
During
I
your
have to
brief
re-log
surgical
into
procedure,
the,
I hope you don't mind. We're now back in Afghanistan. Hope that's not an issue. Keep going.
Okay, I'm not going to ask. Not going to ask. I'll watch the recording. Okay, I was commenting. We were going to go into informational items, and I was asking for public comment. But to be honest with you, looking at the script, it seems like it's before it'd be the topics. So anyway, staff liaison, was there any public comment on the informational items?
There was not.
Thank you for that. Okay. So now we'll go to what's on the screen here, the agenda calendar.
If I may, just to maybe help give the commission a sense of some things that we from the staff side see kind of coming up. And maybe, Nick, if you could scroll a little further down the screen to look at the unscheduled items. There you go, perfect. So one thing on there is, there are a couple things on there. Library Commission semi-annual update to council. So typically the commissions all do annual work plans, which they then prepare for the city council. And then they typically, currently the frequency is supposed to be twice per year. Usually it's the commission chair will go to the city council and provide an update on the commission's sort of achievements. That hasn't happened during the pandemic for lots of obvious reasons. However, my understanding is that could be calendared in September for the city council. I know they're formulating various kind of like a meeting schedule for August and September, but tentatively it could be September 21st. So just maybe more of like a heads up for Chair Earhart and Vice Chair Cohen and maybe past Chair Hadrovic that is coming back onto the council's radar to have the advisory bodies provide that report. So maybe that's something to discuss in August, would be to review the work plan for the commission and help the chair and vice chair and past chair sort of get some input from the commission on what that would be. And then the other item on scheduled is library department annual report. So the Library and Community Services Department does have a strategic plan for the operations, and the commission may recall reviewing the plan in November, December, and then formally recommending the plan in January. What we're doing on the staff side, it has been 6 months since that plan was updated. And so we're doing a scorecard, basically a check-in on achievements. How are we doing toward the strategic plan goals? This is from the department side. Called a scorecard. And so we would appreciate some time with the Library Commission for us to report out on how we've done toward those goals and to get your feedback, and also to make sure that it's transparent to the public who may attend. So those are the two things from unscheduled that I'd like to propose, maybe considering in August and or September.
So just a question. I'm assuming that if you're proposing it for August, that you think you have sufficient time for that, or is it something that, given the fact that you didn't know when the library was going to reopen, you weren't quite sure when you were going to be able to bring staff back to semi or full capacity, and it's really only been not even a month, and we really don't know how things are playing out with the Delta strains. Is it something that it would make sense to push this off to a little closer to the end of the year, or is August? I'm assuming if you're proposing it, you think August is reasonable, but is it because it's the next month and there's an opening, or?
Well, in part because 6 months have passed since we since the plan was kind of updated and finalized in January. And so we did commit that at the 6 month mark, we would just do a quick update. Hey, here's
Okay.
how we're doing. And if in some cases it's like, yeah, because of the pandemic, we haven't gotten to that yet, then, then that's the report out. And the idea being it's a living
Understood.
document. Yeah.
Okay,
Great-
so it's
great
really
question.
more being driven by respect for the calendar and time passing, as opposed to what's going on around us. Understood.
Yeah, certainly. And this, the other thing I'll mention is that the department and library staff have been incredibly busy and productive, even during the pandemic. So there's actually a fair amount to kind of report out in progress toward the strategic plan. Those things that can be done during the pandemic were done. So there's plenty, I think, that we need to report out anyway, because quite a bit has actually happened.
Okay. Point well taken. Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then I do have maybe one other thing that's not necessarily for the calendar, but just a reminder and heads up. And this is related to the pandemic. The city's 4-phase reopening plan currently has advisory body and the city council meetings potentially resuming in person in the September timeframe. So that certainly is subject to change, with the pandemic and everything we've learned. And
That's exciting.
Yeah, it could change, but I just want to call that to the commission's attention that it could be as soon as the September meeting, again, possibly later, that there would be a resumption of in-person. What exactly that looks like, whether Zoom will still be a factor, that remains to be seen. I don't have any clear updates on how that will work. But that's the plan at this point, is for September timeframe to resume in-person meetings.
Okay, if I could circle back to the second bullet we put in there right now. I know the last couple of times when we've prepared for the city council, there have been some pre-meetings for that with a sub team, and similarly, there has been a sub team that's worked on reviewing and updating the work plan. So if we're gonna be reviewing that a month from now, basically, I guess I'm gonna sort of pause right now and sort of say, do I have volunteers? We probably need to meet a couple of times between now and then, quite frankly, and do some pre-work in terms of reviewing the existing work plan. And I know Commissioner Hedgevick did do a presentation to the council like 18 months ago. I know I was there for that. So maybe we could review what was presented then to get an idea of the context and the sort of the scope of one of those presentations. So I'm looking for commission members who want to be involved with that preparation so that we hit the August 16th meeting with it doesn't need to be the final, but a reasonably reviewed and baked update to, a refresh of the work plan if required, and kind of a validation of what the content would be for the city council presentation.
David, I'm certainly willing to volunteer, and I don't know if Nick still has a copy of my last presentation to them, but I hope I still have a copy, and so I can, I'll look in my files to pull it up and send it to you.
That would be great.
I mean, I think I probably have the last two that I think I gave them at least 2, maybe 3. So I'll look for what I have.
Thank you.
Also, I'm pretty sure that we don't need to change the work plan because I think that we updated it relatively recently. So I don't think we need to unless there's anything glaring. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, does that? Because I think it's like an every other year thing. Like we update the work plan every other year.
I think I remember now. I think we were working on 2-year work plans, and I believe the council is now asking the commissions to prepare annual work plans. So,
Well, I tried.
And to be fair, quite a lot has changed in the last year that no one anticipated. So there may very well be things that were on the most recent work plan that would carry over into the current year's work plan.
Well, the current work plan that's available from the Library Commission website was approved in May of 2019, and specifically says it's the 2019 to 2020 work plan. So, Commissioner Leap, I'm not disagreeing that maybe updates are required, but certainly refreshing or at least sort of finding and replacing some of these things might be required. So, okay, so Commissioner Hadjovic volunteered to help. Any other volunteers? I guess I'm going to make a plug. I think it's always good for the vice chair to have some exposure to these things, so that in the future, if they advance to the chair position, they have some idea what they're getting themselves into. But no pressure.
My head's in the clouds. So
I did take a quick look, and David, I have reports that I made to City Council in both June and November of 2019. So I'll pull those out, and I guess I would. Should I email them to you, Nick, and then you would pass them on, or maybe you have copies of them already?
Sure. Yeah, no, I'll take another copy. I'm sure I have them somewhere, but yeah, if you wouldn't mind forwarding those, that would be great, and I can share them with Chair Earhart.
So if a volunteer is needed for this, just put me in, Coach.
Thank you for that volunteering.
Just put me in, Coach. That's fine.
And I'll work with the staff liaison to assess time and availability over the next month for those two meetings. So we'll work around everyone's schedule.
I'm not really traveling. I'm around. It's just meetings during the day, during the week. I'm now expected to go into my work office in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so middle of the day kinds of things are not always easy in a good part of the week anymore. Okay, great.
We
Thank
will,
you.
we will work around your schedule.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay, back to the agenda. Any additional items? So we had talked about whether or not we were going to pass on August. It looks like we've got a couple of things we definitely want to touch on in August. So it looks like we've kind of come to the consensus that the August meeting is going to go forward. Anything else we need to do on this one right now? Staff liaisons, Edka.
No, I think I've got those couple of items, which and inevitably something else will pop up that will be of interest to the commission between now and then. So.
Okay. And I do think a standing update on how the reopening is continuing to progress and those kind of things would be beneficial as well. Okay.
Absolutely. I think I might have some more sort of statistical things that I can share next time, which would give you some kind of idea of what the turnout has been and what the usage has been at the library. Excellent.
Okay, with that, we'll close out E1 and move to agenda topic area F, the advisory body member reports, or affiliate reports. I guess would be the affiliate liaison reports. Open call for any reports from library commission members since the last meeting for the organizations that they were liaising with.
There was a meeting that I was unable to attend, but I believe two of our colleagues were in attendance for the Friends of the Library, and maybe you can give an update in my absence.
Yes, I was there. So I can give an update on the most recent Friends of the Library board meeting.
Thank you.
For the portion that I was in attendance, they kick us out after a little bit to do their business. Sean and I submitted our annual request, a funding request to the Friends, which is, I'm sure as you know, but I'm happy to remind you about how generous the Friends were with funding during the pandemic. They really stepped up and saved our materials budget, which had been cut in response to the challenges that the city was facing. The Friends of the Library really stepped up and helped us out during the pandemic. So we're scaling our request way back this year in recognition for that recent assistance that they provided, but also in recognition that it may take them some time to sort of ramp up their operations and sales to where they can provide that kind of funding in the future. They are back in the library. They are back accepting donations Tuesdays and Saturdays from 1 to 3. They have details on their website and some signage out in front of the library and in the back where they are accepting the donations. Sales have resumed inside the library at the bookstore. I'm not sure if their online store has gotten up and running yet, but I know they're working to get their volunteer team rallied and back together and to resume their normal operations.
Thank you for that update. Yeah, I was just going to ask if the donations that there was that huge pent up urgency to donate. So I'm assuming it's been overwhelming.
Yeah.
Number one most frequently asked question is, when can I donate my books again? Yeah.
So, but they're only taking donations during like those small hours.
Right. The idea is that they don't want to take donations when they're not there to receive and start processing them. They were concerned because they've lost members over the pandemic as well, who've moved out of the area, are no longer able to volunteer. And so they're very concerned about sort of getting inundated with donations. So this is their plan for at least through August, I think they said. They may change that if they find that they can handle that level of donations. people have been pretty respectful about not hiding donations under the signs that say no donations and things like that. So it's been going pretty well so far. And they've also started they've resumed the free book giveaway on Wednesday morning. So they've got the free book carts out in front of the library on Wednesday morning.
Excellent.
I 100% would be like, hey, Nick, can you just like put this in the right place at the right time for me, please? Like,
I don't have any updates for you from the foundation. We maybe Nick or Sean, if I'm forgetting about something big that's happened, let me know. But our last meeting was canceled, and I think we have our board meeting next week. So anyway, no news.
Any other updates from the commissioners? Okay. Well, with that, thank you for bearing with me for my first full meeting as the chair and with my lousy internet performance, and for not panicking and allowing Alan to jump in and cover for me while I was offline. With that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the July 19th meeting. The time is, I guess, California time. It's 7:43 p.m. And with that, have a good evening.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
David.
have a good
Thanks,
evening.
everybody. Have a
Thanks.
good evening.
Bye.
guys,
Bye.
bye.